Hello and welcome back to the CineClub podcast. I'm Rhys.
I'm Billy.
I'm Connell.
I'm Jake.
In this episode, we're delving into Universal's catalogue of monsters, both old and new, following my screening last year of Bride of Frankenstein at CineClub and Creature from the Black Lagoon this year at the CineClub Film Festival from a few episodes ago. Also in light of the recent opening of Dark Universe in Orlando.
Let's kick things off with their iconic classic catalogue, beginning in the 1920s and spanning across more than 3 decades. These films helped to lay the groundwork for horror as we know it today, cementing themselves firmly within popular culture. With that being said, though, what are your favourites from this era? And any you're not so keen on?
Okay, should we start off by ranking them?
Ranking.
Is that a good idea?
Got ranks.
We can try.
Okay.
You know,
do you want to kick it off as the monster man?
gotta go Bride of Frankenstein at the top. It's
Yeah,
undebatable.
Yeah.
It's just peak.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would probably go Invisible Man next. I'm trying to do this off the top of my head. Dracula
No
next.
pressure.
Then Frankenstein. Probably Phantom of the Opera. I think I'll do top 5.
Okay, yeah,
I think
that's fair
that was 5.
Yeah,
maybe
that's
I
about
can't
right.
count.
I mean, I think
things.
generally, I think I'd put the Frankenstein double bill as like the sort of peak of it, like that.
Mm-hmm.
The original Frankenstein's a great film, like, you know, it's really good, and then Bride of Frankenstein's like superb and probably the best one they ever did. So those two back to back just makes that's the best viewing experience for my money, and it's kind of the one. Those are the two I always come back to. But I really like the Invisible Man as well. The Wolfman is really good, and I
Wolfman's
think
great.
it's worth. The thing that's good about the Wolfman is that's also kind of like sets up the first. That's like the first proper plot thread that runs through quite a lot of them, because you get
exactly.
like the Lon Chaney Jr. is great as the Wolfman, and then they develop his character, the sort of Larry Talbot character. He's just like such a great guy. Like, I just love him. Like, you just love it when he just appears in one of these films, and he's kind of like the grounded, sensible one that you can like. It's like, oh cool, he's a monster, but also he's like just quite a good human character. You know, just waiting for him to turn into a Wolfman. And I mean, I've only seen 2 of the ones that he's in, but I do love him when he shows up in the Abbott and Costello film, because, you know, he's like fighting Dracula and everything as the Wolfman. It's really cool, but at the same time, it's like you get that Chaney Jr., Larry Talbot sort of trying to warn everyone, and he's like the sort of wise one who knows more about the monsters than everyone else. You know, he's cool.
It makes it feel like less of an isolated, like...
Yeah, it makes it feel like a proper
like a
cinematic universe,
yeah.
Which is like, obviously, because it's like sort of one of the first ever.
Yeah, it is. It's like the
examples of
pioneer,
that.
and they were doing it before Marvel was.
Yeah, it's
Before
that's
Marvel
it.
existed, really.
But what you were saying there about Larry, it's that's why I like the Wolfman so much, because he's just got a constant through line through all the films. Because like Frankenstein's monster, he's in a lot of them, but he's always getting recast and his characterization's different. Dracula's the same, but Wolfman, he's always Lon Chaney Jr., and he's always got the same character. And he's the only one with that actual arc across all the films. Like, he obviously starts the original, and he's a bit chauvinistic. He's a bit of a brute. But then he gets cursed with the werewolf, and obviously you think he dies at the end of that. But in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, he wakes up again. And he's like, how am I still alive? I remember being killed by my father. And
Money.
Yeah, money. And then it just continues on through every single one of his appearances. He just keeps going to different doctors trying to get cures. So like, he goes to one of Frankenstein's like descendants, and that's how obviously he meets the monster. And then it sort of goes the same with House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, until eventually he's cured. And it's like a nice final shot for him, because he's met this person, and then the moon starts to rise, and he doesn't turn.
Well, there you go.
Oh, that's really nice. That's a really nice ending for him. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think I've got to rate Invisible Man the highest out of all of them. Above the Franken double bill, I'm sorry. But it feels so modern
Stein.
for what it is.
It really holds up incredibly for a film from the 30s.
Like, I was so entertained by it. The editing is so tight. It's got like montage scenes as well. It's got just a brilliant amount of like... Well, I think the character's really good as well, because it's based on a more modern story. It's H.G. Wells, right? That's the book is based on.
Rather than like Shelley or Stoker.
Yeah.
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 So he's out of that gothic era and more into like a modern like he's a monster for the time, I think,
Yeah, it's that
which is
whole
what's quite interesting about him.
experiment
He's
with
like-
science.
Yeah,
kind
that
of
middle
thing,
ground
which-
between the sci-fi and the gothic.
Yeah, that's what I like about him.
He's just so entertaining as well.
He's just nuts. He's nuts.
Yeah.
He's great.
I didn't know that. I went into it thinking he was going to be like a fairly rational
Yeah.
character, but it is
No,
quite
he's just
literally, I'm
nutter.
I'm invisible. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm just going to become like a master criminal because that would be class, wouldn't it? And they're all like, what? It's like,
I wish they didn't explain it as like the drug makes him like a psycho. Like I wish he just did.
he was just like that before, and then he just so happened to get the power of invisibility, and then it's like, oh shit, not that guy. Like, of all the doctors who would get that superpower, not that one. But
Like he's way too cocky. He's really fun. I love his laugh. I think my favourite scene
he's
is when he
so
first
good.
shows off his invisibility powers.
That first act in the pub never gets old.
It's really good, isn't
It's
it?
so good, like that
Like-
whole bit. Yeah, it's just the way he projects everything, and they just like won't leave him alone to the point
Yeah.
where he's like, right, well, screw you lot.
And he just starts chucking his nose at people and that.
You know, the best bit's when he's just a shirt and you know he's got his like nuts.
Yeah,
out
he's just
something like
running around in circles.
that. like bollock naked, but he's like going, he's like laughing and throwing shit about and like just pestering people.
Yeah,
Like-
be a great disguise in a Matalan, wouldn't it?
He starts off.
Cadbury's advert.
He starts off as like a poltergeist type guy, just like throwing stuff about and winding people up, and then he just starts murdering people, which is it's a big jump, I think.
When he just starts derailing trains and
I know that
he
was
just sneaks into the back of
insane.
his old mate's car. He's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to kill you now.
Yeah.
See you in a bit.
I refuse to believe it's that easy to derail a train, though.
Oh,
All
I
he
know.
does is, but he
He
just
just-
literally sneaks into a little thing and then
Yeah.
pulls a lever, and next thing you know, it's off the cliff.
I think who was building that track, right? Right, should we have a setting that just sends the train careening off a cliff and kills everyone on board?
Yeah,
oh,
just
that's
in
a
case.
great idea, boss. Let's have that.
What emergencies would be needed for that?
For that, it's like emergency fall off the cliff. Like,
Yeah. Like he's so joyous about it as well. Like I think like other characters like the Mummy and like Frankenstein's monster, they're very serious about killing people. He's having the time of his life.
Yeah.
in his own man. He's loving it.
I feel like that's also the case really with Phantom of the Opera in the original. He just
That's
seems to
true,
be having
yeah.
a ball the whole time that he's there. He's just posing and making faces at people.
Because he's just a magician, really. If you read the book, then like none of his tricks are like real, none of his magic's real. He's not actually everywhere at once. He's not actually like got some secret powers to go underwater. He's just like a really good magician and like trap maker, which is what's quite interesting about him. But he is having the time of his life. He's very emotional. That's
he's
what
just
I like.
flexing, isn't he? He's just like, I can do this.
I can do this.
Like, nobody can
go
suss
through
out
the-
how I've
I
done
can
it.
come out of the walls. I can follow you around the place. I know your every move. He's
Well,
great at that.
The thing I liked about that was, because I mean, I just watched it last night. They do that sort of really cool thing where you don't actually see you see what he looks like, but gradually. So
Yeah.
like the first 20 minutes, half an hour, all he is a shadow on a wall, and that's really cool. And then he's the creepy looking wax Denham Elliott mask
Oh,
that I
that's
was talking
terrible,
about,
that, yeah.
which I hate. And then eventually it's the Lon Chaney thing, but it's like
Yeah.
that whole idea, the suspense builds and builds, and everybody's hyping up this Phantom. And although it is odd that that's like one of the longest ones, and that was like
Oh,
the first
yeah.
Universal, and it was like all of them pretty much clocking in at about 70 minutes. Then that one's like full hour and a half. I was like, whoa, this is like a proper film. This it's great, but
It's such a good performance as well from Chaney.
yeah.
It's like unreal. Not even just the makeup that he did himself, but like when you were saying about the shadows on the wall, just a lot of, obviously since it's silent, he was doing a lot of the acting with his hands.
yes.
And that's, I think it goes that both of his parents were deaf, so
Yeah,
he's
I was
fluent
just
in
about to
sign
say
language. So that's why he does a lot of acting with his hands.
Oh, right.
Because he
cool,
was
that.
just used to being really like acting a lot without actually having to speak, which is
Yeah.
perfect for a silent film. So
So, how does Phantom hold up compared to the rest of them?
I think surprisingly for something that came out in the 20s, it holds up like better than a lot of the rest of what they would put out later.
yeah,
Because
I agree.
it feels like there was a lot of passion and like actual production behind it, whereas when you get to some of the later stuff that they were just churning out, it's not as great.
Yeah, like that was the big debut, the foot in the door into Monsters, wasn't it? And
Well,
then
you
the
had
rest of them were just like,
technically you had Hunchback of Notre Dame with Chaney as well before that, but that was like the
didn't even know
first
that
proper
existed, yeah.
gothic one.
yeah, he seems to be left behind. I think Hunchback. I didn't really know he was part of this group.
Yeah, he's a bit he tends to be forgotten about.
Well, he's a more sympathetic character normally. Anyway, like
Bless him.
yeah, there is passion in that one. I feel like, I don't know why, but the least passionate one I feel is Dracula. Like, it just feels a bit stale compared to the other ones.
I can't say I agree. I think
I disagree. I think
Ooh,
it's
okay.
because there were. I think in that one, anything that does seem stale or less passionate is probably more just because it was like so early in the days of like doing sound films.
Yeah.
And I think when you go in with that knowledge, I mean, I had the advantage of watching Dracula. Like that was the first one I ever watched. I think I can imagine it being quite hard to go back to Dracula after seeing Bride of Frankenstein or something like that as like your first one, because that's another one where that could have been made in the 60s and it would still look brand new. Like it does not look like it was made in the mid 30s. But Dracula, like, you know, I can believe that it was made in the 30s, but I still think it's held up well, mostly on the strength of the performances. Because I think
Bela Lugosi's brilliant.
Bela Lugosi's
he obviously he loves the character so much, and it's reflected really well in his performance. Same with Edward Van Sloan as Van Helsing.
I wasn't even
Those two are the styles I show you.
I can't remember what's the guy who plays the sort of Renfield character.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know, is that Dwight Fry? Dwight
Fry, that's it. Yeah, he's really, really good in it as well.
Brilliant.
Like, he's
just
cool.
unhinged.
Yeah.
He's so fun. Just like when the boat crashes onto the English shores, and then they open the hatch, and he's just at the bottom. And to Carl Frunn's cinematography, he's just bathed in shadow, standing at the bottom of those stairs, cackling and laughing.
That was like
he was
so genuinely creepy.
It's
to me.
so cool.
Like
Isn't
I
it?
was
Like,
not expecting something like that. Like
even before that, before he turns into the proper like sort of familiar, just where like the look on his face, he's looking around, seeing that he's staying in a castle full of holes, and he's like,
it's like, hang on.
Great. There's armadillos walking around the floor.
I love the armadillos. The weird
What's that armadillo?
What about the armadillo?
It's because like the average guy would never have seen an armadillo before. He's like, oh, how weird and bizarre. We're so used to it. It's like if he had like a walrus in his house or something. Like now, that's just quite. It's weird for a different reason than it would have been
Creatures
back then.
of the night, such music they make.
Speaking of creatures, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, Creature
Yeah,
from the
that's
Black Lagoon.
that was a good one.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's not my favourite, obviously, but the reason I put it on at the festival is just to fit the theme. But I think it still works really well. It can get a bit tedious at times, but I still think it works. And like the makeup and the costumes, brilliant. The underwater scenes are brilliant.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Especially for
I
being,
still
like,
really like it.
For being like some of the first of the kind, the underwater scenes are very, very good.
Definitely.
I do get what you mean with it being tedious, though. It does kind of fall into a loop of what's happening.
Yeah, they
like,
just keep trying to leave.
They
and
keep
the
trying to
creature
leave,
keeps
and the
showing
creature
up.
comes onto the boat, and then it kills a guy, or it doesn't kill a guy. They shoot at it for a bit. They even like almost kill it at one point. They're just like, oh, never mind. We'll have a second half of the film. Why not?
Creature's a funny one because I feel like when like it's more like watching a kaiju film, like the structure of it, where it's got that whole. It's like, there's no such thing as the creature. Sees the creature. There's a creature, and then they're like, we need to kill the creature. Try to kill the creature. Fail to kill the creature. Figure out a way to kill the creature. Kill the creature. The end. That's like kind of it falls into that structure, but I still think it works well because it's not a kaiju for one thing. It's a very much human-sized gill man. You know that design is just so cool, and like. I think the reason I like Creature is a weird one, but I feel like with Universal Monsters, you sometimes get like a bit of a monster for all seasons. And I like the fact Creature from the Black Lagoon is quite a rare example of like quite a sort of it's a horror-y sort of film, but it's
it
so
feels summery.
Like,
Yeah,
it's such a
it's
summery,
very tropical, isn't
warm,
it?
tropical vibe. Like if I could go on holiday in a horror film, that's the one I would go to, like, you know, that or like
Don't
Camp
encounter
Crystal
the
Lake, I
creature.
guess. But yeah, as long as you don't encounter the creature. But he's a totally harmless guy until they start shooting at him, I guess. So,
Yeah,
like,
he's just a bit curious, and that's
Exactly.
why Del Toro made Shape of Water, because he always liked the Creature from the Black Lagoon, but he always
He always
thought
liked the
that
creature from the Black Lagoon, did he?
he wanted the creature to end up with the
He wanted a happy ending.
yeah,
Oh, that's
where
nice.
he
and
gets
that's
it
where
through the
the
eye.
creature, that's where Shape of Water comes from.
Oh, okay, that's
Because he proposed it to Universal, but they turned it down. So then he went elsewhere and just made it without the creature.
See, they've never made a creature film where it's not about him, you know, going after a girl. If it was just me, he would just hang about, you know. He's not
chill.
he's not got like a human homie. Like we could just kick about watching
You'd like
some
a day in the life of the creature.
day in the life of the creature. You know, I'd just you befriend him in the little tropical place, and then you know sit and have a few beers under the stars. He'd probably love that. You know, it'd be great. He's not really a bad guy. Like,
Do you reckon he likes
Take him
beer,
to
though?
take him to a
that's a
casino.
good question, actually. Yeah, he might not like beer, but you know. You give him a paddling pool.
Introducing the joys of gambling and alcohol.
I reckon he's a Long Island iced tea kind of guy.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's brilliant.
Mm.
But anyway, it's a good film. I think it's another one where it's like it's important and it's not something I would come back to very often, but it's definitely worth watching because I think the effects in pretty much all of these films are so good. Like, I mean, there's a couple of moments. There's only a couple of moments in like the end from all the ones I've seen where it sort of takes you out and you're like, oh yeah, this
The
is
Henry
made,
Frankenstein ragdoll off the windmill.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
It's like I want to like remake it in like Gary's Mod or something, and just have this stupid ragdolls because that's exactly what it felt like. It felt
It's like
some sort of
sitcom
Gmod
special
thing.
effects. Yeah, it's
Honestly, you put a laugh track over that, it would work. Like,
but like, yeah, for the most part, I mean, Bride of Frankenstein, I know we've mentioned it a couple of times, but the effects in that are
It's so
they're better
good.
than films that came out like 30 years later, like with the tiny little people. I don't know how the hell they did that.
I don't
That's
get it.
so
It's-
clever.
It's insane. And then all the like the gothic like the German expressionism in
Oh,
the
yeah.
lab
Yeah.
scenes. It's just
And like the castle exploding, like that looks like a shot from like Thunderbirds or some like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like proper model effects that were being done like 20 years before that was like quite a popular way to make films. You know, it's just so cool and like just everything in that film works so well together. There's not like a single point of it that you could say, oh, that lets it down a bit. It's like it's firing on all cylinders. Like it's just such a good film, you know. And the fact it's a sequel as well, it's like easily one of the best examples of a sequel where it takes what was good about the original, because the original's not a bad film. The original's still a good film, but it takes everything that worked in that and just expands upon it, makes it better. In my opinion, anyway. I know a lot of people probably will prefer the first one, but still.
I think it's for the people who've seen both of them. I think it's quite a common sentiment for the second one to be preferred, just because
Yeah.
it builds on the monster's character so much more by making him able to speak, and you've got the iconic scene in the cabin with with the hermit and
Gene Hackman.
and then it's just a shame that they lose all of that by the time you get round to Son of Frankenstein, because it's made like years and years after. Karloff's the only returning actor.
Yeah.
The castle's completely different. The lab's completely. It just feels like a completely different continuity.
Yeah.
Aside from like a portrait of Colin Clive and obviously Karloff being in it, but you do get that bonus of Igor being introduced.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was the first film that he was in, and it was Lugosi. So and he's really fun in that.
Other thing, I've just sort of remembered this as well. I think the other reason they make for such a perfect double bill is they both lead directly. Like the first Frankenstein ends and Bride picks up pretty much exactly where that one finishes.
Well, you could
Like,
blink
it's-
and
Well,
then
that's what
it's
I
so-
tend to, when I watch them, like at Halloween, I watched them both back on VHS, and I stopped Frankenstein just as the windmill scene ends, before that final bit where the Baron shows up,
yeah.
and then I go straight into Bride because the Baron dies off screen between films. And that's why he's not in Bride, because Henry becomes the Baron, because when Pretorius first shows up, he's like, Baron Frankenstein, now I hear, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Right.
So obviously he must have died off screen between films, probably from all the stress. But
Might just fallen down a hole. Like
Yeah, maybe.
Frankenstein did escape through a hole somehow, like the monster. So he might have just fallen
Just
down
tripped.
a hole. He just tripped.
But speaking of like fun Karloff and Lugosi performances, I kind of want to throw in the Black Cat and the Raven. I know I don't think any of you have seen them, but
no.
I really
it's
want to
really,
watch
really
them.
good.
Yeah, it's like they're on my list. I just haven't quite got around to them.
Like the
'cause-
Black Cat, it's just Karloff being like sort of similar to the monster. He's very solemn. It's like a very nuanced performance. And then on the other hand, you've got Lugosi just going absolutely insane, like he does in basically all of his roles. Like when he's Dracula, when he's Igor, he's just going mental. And it's like a really gorgeous film as well, with the decor and like the gothic visuals. It's well worth a watch. The Raven's not as good, but it's still really entertaining because you've got Lugosi being in like a basket case again, just chaining people up in his basement, a really mental, like Edgar Allan Poe-esque traps. So he's just got like a blade on the ceiling swinging back and forth slowly
that's
down
like a
towards
Scooby-Doo
someone.
trap, like.
Yeah, it's really fun. But obviously Karloff as well, the mummy.
Yeah.
You can't get
Yes.
around that. I do wish the film was more like the opening throughout the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Oh,
'cause,
the
like,
opening's brilliant.
Yeah,
Me and Reese were just saying the same thing the
Uh-huh.
other day. It's like it's such a strong start. And it's, the rest of the film, it doesn't like massively nosedive after that,
Yeah.
but it's nowhere near as cool. That whole opening, the sort of vibe they create, the funny the model title, which I love.
Oh, that was so good.
A little practical
that's so
title
cool.
screen where
That's
it's like
like
a
one of my
little
favourite
model.
ones.
Like, it's so cool. And then obviously you get an actual mummy.
Yeah.
That you
Instead
think
of just a dude in a face.
Yeah, he
rather than just-
shambles out and his eyes slowly open,
Yeah.
and then the scientist or the archaeologist, he just starts cackling maniacally. He's like, "Oh, he went for a little walk," and then it just cuts away, and that's like,
Yeah.
that's the
and then
last
it's
you
just
see of him. Then he's just
and he
a
just shows
crusty
up later
looking-
on, and just like,
Like someone get him some.
he's just like a slightly crustier man.
Like I think
pretty much. Yeah.
the problem is
Crusty
though,
man in a fez.
all the source material for the Mummy has that kind of plot line going on, where the Mummy originally starts out as like a zombie-like figure, then they start like turn back to their like previous self and their full power, and that's the problem. I think what we need is more of the iconic bandages Mummy,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
like more of a transition.
You do get that later on, and like the Mummy's Hand and all the following sequels, he is a bandaged mummy, but like he's not really a character. He's just a shambling monster.
He's just
Yeah,
essentially a
which-
zombie. Yeah.
Because I can't remember the actor's name in The Mummy's Hand, but it's quite an entertaining film. It's like a precursor to the Frasier ones. But as you get on to the later ones, it's Lon Chaney Jr. under the makeup. He hates it because he can hardly move, and he's just like he's just a faceless shambling monster.
Yeah.
But like that first original film, you sacrifice obviously the look of the mummy, but you get a much more like a nuanced performance from Karloff.
Yeah.
And you put that with the Carl Front cinematography, and I think even if it gets a bit boring at times, it's massively enhanced by those two elements.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't not enjoy myself when I watched it. I think it was just one of them ones where it was like, if only they made this again in the 90s with like better special effects, maybe like some sort of CGI monster, maybe like a quippy sort of main protagonist, and I mean, and I've always wondered what would happen if they ever did that. I think that would have been really good.
Well,
but,
funnily enough, Jake, speaking of said mummy, we're going to move on to Universal's modern attempts to revitalise their classics to varying degrees of success. Are there any standout films or projects to you guys?
I wonder which one Connell's going to mention.
Exactly what I'm going to mention. But I will start with that one just to get it out the way. I know I'm going to be scolded by a lot of people out there, but then some people may understand. But Van Helsing from 2004, starring Hugh Jackman, is my favourite film of all time. And
That is
people are going to laugh at
insane.
me for that.
nah, it's cool.
They're really going to laugh at me, but it's like I was like 8 years old and seeing that guy and he looked so badass. I was like,
Exactly.
oh my
It's-
God.
Did it like fundamentally affect the path your life's taken?
yeah.
It
shaped
is.
you
You
into the man
can tell
you'd
because
be.
he
Yeah.
didn't look like a Van Helsing fan, like that sort of Hugh Jackman and like with like he
That
sort
just
of.
sounds
That sounds-
derogatory.
that sounds like-
You look
that
like a huge-
that sounds
you look
like
a
a
good piece
Van
of
Helsing
merch,
fan.
though.
Exactly that. I mean that in the coolest way possible. Hugh Jackman with his sort of long flowing hair and his big long black coat and
and,
with his various gadgets to kill monsters. Like it's
that's
so
what
cool,
it is.
isn't
It's
it?
like he's got so much like shit. He's got like a fully automatic crossbow.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
got saw blades that he can just whip out at any
He's like a
point,
kind of
you
like
know.
Punisher character,
Yeah.
but for
well,
vampires.
he's a Belmont. That's what it is. It's like Van Helsing is just, as far as I'm concerned, the closest thing. If we never get a live action Castlevania film, I'll be
This is
happy
it.
because I think it already happened and it was called Van Helsing. Because
That's
you literally
true.
get,
Yeah.
Well, I
you
think
look-
I think it starts out really cool, like with the black and white going up to the windmill, stuff like that. And I don't mind the start of it, but I feel like as it goes on, I start to lose more and more. Like at the start, I was thinking, oh, this is nowhere near as bad as people say it is.
Yeah.
Then as it goes on, I was just sort of waiting for it to finish. Then when you get to that ending where it's Dracula's castle or something and everything's just really rubbery CGI and
Oh.
he turns into a wolf and he's fighting Dracula and
yeah.
I was just like, okay, I've had enough now.
I think
I think
it,
it's badass as hell.
Oh yeah, it's really cool.
That's
yeah.
just my
It's
inner
just the
child.
sort of thing
I
that you would
think.
put on like on one of those really edgy like Hot Topic t-shirts where it's like a wolf
Yeah,
fighting
yeah.
a big bat or something.
yeah, that's fair.
So don't mess
the,
with me.
the things is in HMV with like the skeletons on them. That's
Yeah,
the Van
yeah.
Helsing vibe.
Yeah.
You're
But
not
it
invited
worked
to
for that
Van
film.
Helsing's birthday
It
party.
feels like they got too bloated about in the midpoint of the
Yeah,
film,
that's
then they
it,
rushed to
exactly.
finish it off
Yeah.
because they have Frankenstein, werewolves, Dracula, every single thing.
They were
under
meant
the
to have
sun.
creature in it in some
Yeah.
capacity
Oh,
as well, but
really?
they cut them.
Which
Oh.
would have been sick,
I know.
because it was when they fall down.
Yeah, I think he's meant to
and,
rescue them or something.
Like
Oh.
there's like a little like pool bit sort of thing.
Yeah.
And one of them was supposed to be grabbed by the creature and was supposed to come out, and then Frankenstein was supposed to like come out and beat the shit
Oh,
out
that's when
of
they,
him. So.
that's when they find Frankenstein.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
the same thing in the film. He just says oh, he's standing right behind you.
Yeah.
He's right behind me.
What do you think of the Frankenstein design in that film?
I
love
quite like it.
I
I
think
quite
it's
like
pretty
it.
cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
It's like takes what's good about the original like lurchy design and then amps it up with like the sci-fi elements that
and
Van
the
Helsing has.
steampunk stuff.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like he's got like an exposed lightning skull.
I was just about to
thing.
say,
Yeah.
that's the
For
one where you can like
electricity,
see into
like-
his
Yeah.
head, isn't it? And it looks
Mhm.
really cool. Yeah, I do like that design. I think, but
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he's like it's like what from previously watching like Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and stuff. I thought like, well, it's like the way that he screams and stuff, and he gets like scared of things, and then he
Mhm.
says all of these different things about wanting to live and just be someone normal.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like that would have been pretty much the exact same thing in the older ones
Mhm.
if like Frankenstein spoke that way.
Yeah,
because like
it's-
it's like it's near like the end bit where he's like clinging onto a rope or something, and like Carl's like, "Oh, you're supposed to die," and he goes, "No, but I want to live." I'm like, "Oh, that's actually."
I know
sad.
it's a good translation of the character onto screen. And like, I'm sure the actors played him again in like I think it was a Young Frankenstein musical or stage show. He
right.
played
That's
Frankenstein
cool.
again.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think that was my favorite part of the film. How they adapted the monster.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman was quite fun as Van Helsing as well.
Oh, he's
I think it
great.
went on for a bit too long, and I wasn't keen on the person they had playing Dracula. I
Oh,
thought
I
I
thought
thought the
it was okay.
ponytail was just a bit
Yeah.
too much.
Oh, the ponytail's a bit greasy. Like, yeah, you're right, but like,
Oh my
Rhys
god!
coming out on all
I'm not-
firing
I'm-
all cylinders.
like he needs the slick back hair, definitely Dracula.
yeah.
But I don't know. He just feels a bit like smelly looking. That Dracula.
He looks a bit.
I get that, to be honest, but
yeah.
yeah, no, I do see what you mean.
Mhm.
Like, I think.
but I'd definitely say one, like, I know it has many things, but like there is one particular thing which stands out to me as a flaw is the design of Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I
we've
like
talked
that.
about this
I mean,
before, haven't
not dissing Robbie Coltrane because he's a great actor, like, and he voiced him, but Mr. Hyde is not really this big
Yeah, yeah.
Hulk-looking dude. Like, same mistake was made in what was it, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Every
where, like,
adaptation just fundamentally misunderstands who
Yeah.
Jekyll and Hyde. Like
Yeah.
even with the classic catalogue, they never did a proper film, but they did an Abbott and Costello meet Jekyll and Hyde, and it was Karloff.
Yeah.
But he was like he looked really monstrous in that as well. He
Yeah.
didn't just look like a slightly different, uncanny human.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which obviously it wouldn't work as well for a monster film, but
Especially
that's
with Boris
what
Karloff,
that's
like.
what Hyde is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But obviously, we alluded before to another one of Stephen Sommers' monster remakes, The Mummy. What did you think of that one?
I love
The
it.
Mummy is
personally.
a
it's
really
another
good film.
childhood one as well, like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I know, and just like Brendan Fraser was just like, I just think he's a really good actor. Like, you know, it's like
Yeah.
I feel like the whole film, it's kind of a similar vibe to like how it was with Van Helsing. It's like it
Yeah.
doesn't take itself completely seriously,
Yeah.
like, but there's bits you can laugh at and stuff like that. But I did like the story, of course, because it was being similar.
Well,
I did like the effects as well.
I liked how they just took this classic horror property and turned it into like an Indiana Jones adjacent
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
I
that.
think Fraser works much better as a leading man for one of these things than Hugh Jackman did, personally.
Okay.
I don't really like the second one because I watched that years later. But the first one I think still holds up really well for what it is,
Yeah.
and it's one that you can just revisit time and time again. I don't think it really gets old. It's just entertaining as anything.
Well, it's
Was,
like
was the Mummy Returns was that the one with
I think the Rock,
the
where he was like a
Rock
big
as the-
scorpion.
Oh,
That
okay.
is-
Oh,
right?
that's
You say
terrible.
stuff about
Yeah.
Van Helsing's
Yeah,
CGI
that's
being
rough
bad.
as hell.
That
That
is
is
horrible.
That's like basically
Like,
the
that's
worst
shite.
CGI ever.
But I know that's just completely overshadowed everything else about the film because whenever you think
Yeah.
of The Mummy Returns, all anyone thinks about now is the horrible CGI Rock.
Yeah.
yeah.
Of the Scorpion King.
Yeah.
Yeah. They made a spin off of the Scorpion King actually.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm
That
sure
was
it's still
good,
running
though.
to this day.
It's like a Conan thing.
Uh-huh.
Like that. It's like that kind of vibe. What about other Mummy sequels. I think it's Tomb of the Dragon
Tomb of the
Emperor.
Dragon Emperor.
I
Yeah.
never watched it.
I've
'cause it's
never,
terrible.
I've never seen any of the
Because
sequels.
it's not even
but-
like, I don't even know how you can call it the Mummy, because it's not in Egypt, it's in
Yeah.
China
Well,
or
he's
something.
like a terracotta
Yeah,
mummy.
it's-
Yeah, it's like, instead of an Egyptian mummy, like Rhys says, he's a terracotta soldier or something.
It's
Oh,
very
right.
cool, but it goes too far away from the original concept. I
Yeah.
think.
Well, I
Like
think
there's
yeah.
Yetis in it, and that it's like it feels like a modern day Van Helsing, actually, like in terms of timeline wise.
Right.
It's a similar
would it
type
be?
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the Mummy. I like how it does with the extra time and money that like what the original Mummy should have done, giving us more of a like transition phase between the
Yeah,
bandages
exactly
zombie mummy
that. That's like,
into the like
yeah.
lich necromancer type mummy.
Yeah.
I think,
Mhm.
I
I think
mean,
that works.
I like it because it's like an entirely different sort of film to a lot of these, but I think you're right about it being the Indiana Jones influence is very strong, but I feel like I like it in the way it fits into that sort of little subgenre of all them like pulpy 90s, like sort of
Yeah.
comic booky action films, like, you know, like The Rocketeer and like those sort of
Yeah,
films where it's got,
Mhm.
It's very, very 90s. and
you know,
that's
it's
sort of
very
what the charm
90s, but
is.
I like it. It's that 90s interpretation of like, you know, the sort of the past and the archaeologists who also happen to like be really good gunfighters and like
Yeah.
I love the way everybody's dual wielding pistols as well. I never realized how few films other than like John Woo films do that until I watched that. It was like every single gunfight was like everybody was just going around two guns blazing. It was like it was so cool, you know. It was like and you know, it's got that sort of the big CGI sandstorm and like a plane chase and the sort of funny looking CGI monster thing.
Honestly, like there's one little thing that's just popped into my head about it seems to be a Stephen Summers thing though, but like he has like a three main character sort of rule kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like you look at the Mummy, it's Brendan Fraser, and then Van Helsing, Hugh Jackman. You've got the main guys, and then
Yeah.
you've got the sidekick. You've got Carl David Wenham in Van Helsing, and then John Hannah. I forgot what his name was in the Mummy.
I was
but-
just about to say
and
that-
then
that
the love
guy
interest,
from-
Kate Beckinsale, and damn, I forgot who it was in
Oh
the
my
Mummy.
God.
but,
I know who you mean.
Like, you know,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
that kind of pattern. I'm thinking,
That
Yeah.
core trio,
Stephen.
yeah. Uh-huh.
But I quite like that. I feel like they play off each other quite well, and I quite like just when there's like three fun characters all exploring the like, you know, getting into all sorts of trouble, but they just have the quippy action lead who sort of takes care of all the like the business, and you know, it's I don't know, it's just they play off each other really well, especially in the Mummy. I think, you know, Van Helsing does it well as well, but like I mean, I watched the Mummy more recently than Van Helsing, so I sort of remember it better, but. Yeah, they're you know, they're really good films. They're very, very 90s, but that's not it. I mean, there is more modern Universal monster stuff as
They
well.
are.
Isn't there?
I was just about to say, you can't really talk
Oh,
about the
no.
Mummy and how we're talking about jumping the shark a bit earlier with the sequels without mentioning the big elephant in the room being Tom Cruise's The Mummy, which was meant to be the launch of Dark Universe alongside. Well, originally it was they were going to make it
Cruise
be
shows up at
Dracula
Universal
Untold
Studios.
with Luke Evans, but then that completely bombed. So they were like, oh. Never mind, that was never meant to be the start of Dark Universe. It's actually this, The Mummy. And then, you know,
What happened to that? Wasn't there another Frankenstein film? Like
That was going to be coming out, wasn't
that
it?
was
to
there
be,
was meant
yeah.
to be a Bride of Frankenstein remake after that, but it was going to be like it was going to change the story. So like the bride came before the monster.
not even that. Well, there was
right.
there was another one. There was like I Frankenstein or
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
something like that. I can't. Was that even meant to be in that universe?
I
or
don't
was that
think
just
so, because
something else?
it was Angelina Jolie was meant to be the bride, and Javier Bardem was meant to be the monster.
Fair enough.
But yeah, like you had one of the brainchilds of this new Dark Universe was put in charge of the Mummy. He'd never directed a big feature film like this before, so Tom Cruise saw the power vacuum, came in, basically took it over, and tried to turn it into a star vessel for himself, replacing the woman who was the Mummy in it and making himself become the Mummy by the end of it. And like that's really the reason
my
that it
God.
bombed, because he took like what was meant to be a horror action film and turned it into a Tom Cruise
Just a Tom
Mission
Cruise
star
action
vessel
film.
like Mission Impossible or something like that, and it just doesn't work. I watched it last year for the first time, just to like say, I've seen basically all the Mummy films. I want to watch this one as well, just to see if it's really as bad as they say it is, and it was. It was absolutely awful.
That makes me need to watch it now.
Yeah.
like,
It's-
with caution.
It's like Russell Crowe is in it, and he's Jekyll and Hyde. But he's meant to be like he's the Nick Fury type character for this universe who was meant to be assembling them.
Oh,
but like
right.
at least he doesn't turn into a big monstrous thing, but he slightly turns a bit purple when he goes into hide mode.
It turns into Barney.
It was so strange.
Going hide mode.
But like it was the same problem that DC had, where they were rushing to establish a universe,
To try and keep
and
up
there was
with
too many
Marvel.
cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because like you had all the brain children who were doing the storylines for it, but then it was all brought down in one fell swoop, and I can trace it back to Tom Cruise because he saw that power vacuum, he came in, he took over and changed the film, and it just didn't work whatsoever.
It never
with what
really
he
made
did.
sense to have him in like a Universal Monsters style film anyway, to be honest. Even if he hadn't have done that, it still probably would have been a bit weird.
Well,
like
that's the
having,
thing. He's always been sort of keen to, because he was they were meant to do a Van Helsing remake before this Dark Universe stuff, and he was keen to play Van Helsing and that. So, but then that carried on to The Mummy, so he stayed on and played the main character in The Mummy instead.
Yeah, I think actually that has just made us think a key difference with the newer ones and why some of the newer ones don't work is with the classics and this kind of goes for like every monster film. This works for like Godzilla stuff as well. Generally speaking, you want the monster to be the star.
Yeah.
Like usually the sort of, you don't go in watching these classic monster films because it's like, oh sweet, like, you know, Edward Van Sloan's in this as, you know, Van Helsing, and you know what I mean, he's really cool, but it's like oh, the film is Dracula, who's playing Dracula, oh, he's really good as Dracula, awesome. You don't really watch it and you're like, oh, The Mummy, I don't really care about The Mummy, but Tom Cruise is in it, get it, let's go see Tom Cruise do something, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I think
it's become. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
they don't need to have like they don't need to be like big star vessels, and I'm hoping that the new Frankenstein, the Netflix thing, won't do that. I know it's got like Oscar Isaac and stuff, and he's quite a star, but he seems like he's like more like a sort of proper actor, I guess. So,
But what I was going to
But
say
we'll
is
see.
now, but since that star vessel with The Mummy, it sort of seems like the monsters are mostly condemned to Blumhouse, low budget,
Yeah.
to mitigate the risk, because you've had Lee Whannell, I think he's called, who's done both The Invisible Man, which was quite good, and The Wolfman, which was not as good. But like the like lower budget, like sort of reimaginings of these characters. It's not beat for beat remakes. And I think James Wan is meant to be making a Creature from the Black Lagoon remake.
they've been talking about that for
Yeah.
ages, haven't they? Yeah, I'd forgot about that.
So I
actually.
think that, there's some interesting stuff on the horizon, but like I say, I'll always prefer the classics, I think.
Yeah.
Because most of the remakes that I've seen and the new attempts, they just haven't really held a candle aside from that original Brendan Fraser Mummy film.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I can't argue with that.
Obviously, we've sort of touched on this before, but why do you guys think these films have stood the test of time so well, where others might have faded into obscurity, or maybe even The Prince lost in the case of something like London After Midnight?
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think the remakes can really work, or will they always be inferior to the originals?
Well, the Mummy remake is already, I think, superior to the original.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
inclined to
That's
agree.
the only one
Yeah,
that's really
I'd
had
say straight
success.
away that easily.
I think The Invisible Man was okay to get the sci-fi roots of it.
Yeah, you can't
But it
beat
wasn't as
Claude
fun.
Rains going mental. Like as cool and gritty as the Blumhouse one was, it doesn't hold a candle.
It's just not the same.
It was
that's the
more of
thing,
a horror film.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
like-
much scarier because it was like real world themes and issues and what's her name, Elizabeth
Moss.
She
isn't
was
it,
really
from-
good in it.
yeah, Handmaid's Tale.
But yeah, it's just, to me, none of them have compared.
Well, I think
No.
that's it, though, isn't it? Because it's quite an interesting thing because they're technically horror films, and you always see them billed as horror classics. But I've never really seen them as horror films. I've always just seen them as monster films.
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
Same,
That's the classification. I feel exactly the same. They're not horror films 'cause I don't think they're scary.
yeah.
They might have been scary to an older audience, but
Yeah,
even then,
but
I think it was more entertaining than scary.
Exactly
for most of the
that.
time.
It was
don't
like
really-
a sci-fi fantasy, like pulpy thriller, really,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Exactly
Exactly,
that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Where like it's the same. I mean like Godzilla stuff gets classed as horror films, but that it's
They're not.
that-
It's
that
just- it's
monster
the
films,
monster
that's
films,
the
yeah.
point.
It's
And you-
got a monster in it.
and
that
every
people are
sort
scared
of remake nowadays either goes down it only goes down the action route, which has the chance of sort of missing the whole point of it being a monster film in the first place, or the straight up horror route, but it doesn't they don't need to be proper horror films. You know, they can just be like a cool thriller with like this monster in it. You know, that's sometimes.
That's what I like about this Dark Universe they've just come out. Obviously, it's not a film, but I think it bears mention because it's like a remake of the classics.
Yeah,
and it's not really terrifying. It gets that it's monsters, and that's what the appeal is. It's sci-fi. It's fantasy. Like the main thing that's come out of it was Igor of all things, and that's because he's funny. He's just like he's technically a monster, but he's funny, and it appeals to people more than just flat out horror or flat out action.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a film that builds a sort of personality and a character out of the monster rather than focusing too much on stuff that you don't care about, because like, you know, stuff, a lot of the more modern ones bill it as like, oh, it's the film featuring the monster and it's like really horrific and everything, but but you just never, half the time the monster just doesn't do anything, or like they're just not in it, whereas the originals, that they are like the constant presence throughout, like everything that happens seems to be surrounding them and everyone else is responding to the monster rather than, you know what I mean? Like, it's,
I get what you're saying.
Because like they're too overexposed now to be scary, I think. And they might have always been, because these are like literary classics for the most part that they're adapting.
That's true.
Like Frankenstein, Dracula, the Invisible Man. Everyone's heard of them, even at the time, probably. So they're just excited to see their favorite characters come onto the screen instead. And yeah, I think like it's not enough now that, like, say if we made Frankenstein now, just as it is, people wouldn't really be as thrilled as they would be in the 30s.
I don't know if I agree, because you've got the Guillermo del Toro. It's not a Universal one, but that's coming out on Netflix at the end of the year, and there's a massive buzz around that, and that seems to be quite a faithful adaptation.
I do see what you mean, though, kind of about how it's like they weren't completely unknown characters, but they weren't seen in the zeitgeist. Like, you can't say the word Frankenstein to somebody without them thinking of the sort of
Boris Karloff.
Karloff look with big head, bolts, and like that sort of design. Like, if somebody else had come around first and done like another version, you know, some sort of stitched up Robert De Niro in the 1930s, that's all people would think of now, you know, for better or for worse. It's like these are the monsters. They are just the originals.
They're definitive images now.
Exactly.
There's no getting away from that.
Just think of like how when people like if they go out at Halloween, it's like people can easily recognise what they are because of those designs. Like if you're Dracula, long cape, like white sort of ruffed shirt, teeth, that kind of thing.
The Hungarian accent as well. Bela Lugosi. That was
exactly.
I don't think that was ever a thing until Bela Lugosi did the voice.
It wasn't.
And now everybody goes, oh, I'm Dracula, blah blah blah. You know, that kind of thing.
It's like literally Hotel Transylvania. It's not. That's I think that's not Universal, but you go back to that, and that's playing on all of these things established by these classical. And I think that goes back to what the point of the question was. Why have they stood the test of time so well? It's because of the iconography.
They just
it's just so memorable.
They are the sort of versions of those monsters, and they've influenced like everything. Because I mean, you know, I was talking about Castlevania. That was like my sort of gateway in, because like I didn't really watch that many horror films, but I loved Castlevania, and I sort of watched, you know, I played all the games, and they very much just lift these characters. They're like exactly the same designs. It's the same sort of lineup of monsters. And and that's a video game made in Japan. Like, and that just goes to show how much the influence has travelled,
how wide of a reach it has.
And that made us want to go like, oh, actually, I'd quite like to watch these proper monster films because they've got that sort of gothic vibe, the same as what you see.
You had the Hammer horror over here as well, but even then, that's sort of they're deeply inspired by the classic Universal films. Because the designs are all still very similar, and they use like, obviously I don't think The Mummy is actually really based on any, I might be wrong, but is it? I don't think it's based on anything.
It's not based
really
on one singular thing. It's just a general Egyptomania trend in the Victorian era.
But like Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, they have the exact same character names as the Mummy sequels from Universal.
Oh right.
So like
they were lifting stuff.
Yeah, it's
intentionally.
It's an institution, really. That's how I can describe it. It's as I said at the start, it's laid the foundations of horror for generations to come, and that's kind of why I like them so much. Because even though they've come out 30s, 40s, 50s, so on, it still just feel completely timeless. The vast majority of them, like Invisible Man or Bride of Frankenstein or anything like that, if they could have come out 10, 20, 30 years ago, and like they don't look any different. The dialogue might be a little bit different than what you would expect from a script today, but everything just feels so ahead of its time with them.
Yeah, and it's a cinematic universe as well. There's so few examples of sort of early cinema that does that kind of fun, built up, all these characters crossing over without it being, really stupid. It's like it's not, they don't take loads of care with it, like nowhere near as much care as like Twitter and the MCU would like have you going nowadays. Like, I would quite like, I feel like that would be hilarious watching. What do you mean they've not cast Bela Lugosi as Dracula again? It's unbelievable. It's the same universe. But like, it's enough to be believable, and you do really grow to like these characters, and it has that same thing where it's like, oh, I want to watch this one's got Wolfman in it, get in, let's watch
exactly.
that.
I wanted to watch all the rest of these films just to follow Chaney's Wolfman because he's so good in the role and because he's consistently characterized. Like, obviously this isn't like an official canon thing, but I always tend to see that Dracula in these films as a title rather than a man. And that's my rationale for why he looks different in basically every film. So like when the head vampire dies, the next sort of lead male vampire would take the name Dracula, and that's why in Dracula's daughter she doesn't take his name. So like you get Son of Dracula with Lon Chaney Jr. as well, and he's playing someone called Count Alucard, but that's just Dracula backwards. And then you get round to House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and I've forgotten his first name, but it's something Carradine, and he's playing Dracula in both of them. Like I say, I tend to take it as like a title, but Chaney, he is Wolfman, and he carries on throughout all the films.
Yeah.
It made us like binge all of them, because like, oh, he's great, love him, get amongst it.
And even with Frankenstein's monster, you kind of believe that. I mean, obviously you lose a lot when Boris Karloff's not playing it, but you can sort of just kid yourself into thinking, oh, well, maybe he just made another body. This is just another monster,
Well,
when it's Glenn Strange playing it as a different sort of, it still looks like
what I tend to see it as is when the castle collapses at the end of Bride, something about it makes him regress, because he's still Karloff in Son of Frankenstein, but he can't really speak anymore. He's back to how he was in the first film.
Is that the one where he's got the big furry tunic thing on? Yeah.
And then you get on to Ghost of Frankenstein, where it's Lon Chaney Jr. playing him, because he's pretty much played everyone at this point.
Yeah.
And he's got Ego going around with him. And then at the end of that, Ego's brain gets put into the monster, but it makes him blind. So
I remember you telling us about this.
So then you get round to Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and the monster was meant to be able to speak in that, and it was meant to be Lugosi speaking, and obviously he was still blind. Then they decided against that after it had all been shot. So you get into it, and they've cut all of Lugosi's dialogue, and his eyes are like shut most of the time, so he just looks like he's playing a caricature of the character, because he's stumbling around looking blind and not speaking.
Because he's meant to be blind, without actually saying that.
But even with blunders like that and bizarre choices behind the scenes, I think they still really work. And I think the fact that they've just opened up this multi-billion-dollar theme park and put the classic monsters in there, it just speaks to how relevant they are with today's audiences still.
Yeah, totally.
No matter how many failed attempts they can do to remake it, they're still going to be around, and you're still going to know these actors as these characters.
Totally. Yeah, can't argue with that at all.
So, I think that's all the mad scientists and monsters we have time for in this episode. Now we pose the question to you. What's your favourite classic horror film? Get in touch with us at cineclub.podcast@sparksunderland.com.
Make sure to check out our socials at the CineClub Podcast _Spark on Instagram, at the.cineclub.podcast on TikTok, or the CineClub Podcast on Facebook. They're all good ways to keep up to date on the latest podcast developments.
As always, this episode was recorded and produced by us, the Sunderland University students, as well as being edited by Emily Main. Special thanks to Steve Cannon, Barbara Sadler, and Richard Berry. A reminder that our torch-wielding mob this week has been me, Connell.
Me, Jake.
Me, Billy.
And me, Rhys.
This has been a CineClub production for Spark. Thanks for listening.